we have one resolution that has come forward from the Met Pool people, so I'll just put it out first, even if that's not on the schedule in that way. But both Henny and Bella were on the Parks Committee meeting last night for 3 hours trying to get their resolution into the Parks Committee, which finally came up at the end and we couldn't hear them or me. So I'm just going to say it right now. And you are taping, right, Marie?
It's on record, but I still need
And I don't
people
know
coming
that
to
we
your
have
meeting. You don't have a quorum.
yeah, I know, but we could start the meeting anyway, right? Can't sit and wait for a quorum. Either way, we'll have opportunity to hear the resolution this time or after the holidays if we don't get a quorum. It will definitely not go away. And just to remind everybody, and I think some of you heard it last night, that we have hundreds of women that have been fighting now for the last 3 or 4 years to keep a swim time at the Metropolitan Pool. And it's actually an unbelievable thing. And I think we're looking also for research students in spring, maybe from the Hunter or someplace else to really put the story together, because it's quite actually very, to me, very troublesome. But where we had gotten to after 2 years of fighting, after de Blasio is now gone. So let's just say de Blasio will be gone, thank heavens. And he is the mayor that single-handedly uh, took away the women's right to have swim time at Met Pool, which seems like an unbelievable role for a mayor to have, but he did. And they had gone from 8 hours of swim time to 4. And then we added 1 after a whole year of battling and going to all the town hall meetings with the mayor. He added 1. And now they have been offered, Henny, and they've been called from the Parks Department, that they are being given 3 hours, 1 hour on Monday and then 2 hours on Tuesday. And any of you that have been around the swim time know that, well, first of all, the women aren't going back because it's 3 hours and they had spent a whole year waiting in long lines and then not being able to get in and all that. Because there is some view that there is either a strong group of people in our neighborhood, which we haven't found them, or there is some legal reason that women cannot have space to have their own swim, that's some kind of new discrimination. Nobody has been able to clarify. And if anybody wants to jump in on that, you can. But that was initially, they tried to say the Human Rights Commission had sent a letter to the Parks Department saying that they had to take away the 8 hours of swim time a week because somebody had made a complaint and they were just getting them ready. And then politically, I don't want to go into the whole long thing because you've already heard it, but the point is that there was an intervention, and apparently if you can ask for a special consideration, and that's what was asked by an assemblyman from another neighborhood, not ours, to have the 4 hours. So 4 hours were given, and as an exemption, that they could have this exemption for these hours. And they found out during the last 3 years or 2 years that we've been involved in this whole thing that the women would wait in long lines over by Met Pool, and there's only so many that can get in. And without, again, getting into I think we have to just now, and you can help me with this, but we have to put the facts back down on a sheet of paper that have it very clear what were the problems in the last 2 years. And the resolution that the women want, now that we have whole new political people in, every single one of them, from Lincoln Ressler to Jennifer to Emily at one time, from everybody I know, has supported women's swim. So we want to go back to what do women, all women, not Jewish women or Muslim women or old women or young women, what do they really want? So they're going to spell out a resolution in writing, which will ask for their 8 or 10 hours, because 8 is what they had wanted to have, and now they'd really like 10, so there could be 2 hours at night. So this resolution will come forward, and I think that it's a good, if anybody has comments on how you would like to see this held. Other countries, other places have women's swim. Canada has a lot of public places that have women's swim, and nobody can tell me as a lifetime feminist when it happened that women, when they finally win the right to have something, can't have it because they're women. I never found out when that happened in our women's movement, but some of you, if there's any lawyers here or anybody else, can bring it up. But it's now a health issue. The point is, we'd like to put it on the corona, the response to corona, because people, the major activity for a lot of the women is to be able to have uh, space, public space where they can do exercise because they don't have it. And you know, our neighborhood, there's not a lot of public spaces. And if you are a religious person or an older person or whoever you are, you don't actually like to have a lot of people standing around watching you swim or do exercise or do whatever. So we're looking for public space for women to have for exercise, and maybe even asking for the senior centers, the Parks Department are working in the senior centers. So anybody have any comments on that
Yeah, I mean, I
resolution
would
will
say
still be
something.
running around?
I would just say that I was curious about it, so I went and watched. At first, I'd heard about the women's swim issue from a Muslim friend because my daughter had gone to PS34. There were a lot of Muslim women at the school who were wonderful, and they told me that they can't swim with men present, and they had become kind of friendly with the Hasidic Jewish women, and I just thought that was so wonderful. And then when I joined the women's committee and I heard about it, they said if anyone would like to come see what we're dealing with, and I thought, yeah, I'll walk over and check it out. And it was insane. There were I don't know how many, 100 women there who wanted to swim. They were swimming like one behind the other, like practically touching each other's feet because there were so many of them. Because a lot of the elderly women need to do things like water sports, which are not really impactful, hard on the body. But yeah, it makes sense for me. It's a hyper local issue. If you look at it as a hyper local issue, we have this pool that has a lot of empty hours throughout the week, enough to accommodate 8 or 10 hours of women's swim. So why not? I mean, and also there were some sexual assault survivors who didn't want to swim around men, which I don't know how you could judge that either. So that's just my 2 cents, is that it seems like the right thing to do
Well,
to
if
give them hours.
I'm going to kind of piggyback a little bit on Jane. Um, I think there is an ability issue here. If you have women that have physical disabilities that need to use that pool to work out and do those exercises, they need to have that access. And as you said, women that have been victims of sexual assault or perhaps don't feel comfortable or safe in a mixed setting. Okay. And a pool is just another public space. And a problem with public spaces is they were designed by and for able-bodied men. Okay. A pool is an example of that. A park, and Jade and I, we've been talking about the park. Another example of that. So I don't know. I don't get how making it safer for women is discriminatory, since a lot of the issues that come, quote, with women's issues also dovetail onto ability issues, seniors issues, LGBTQ. It makes no sense.
And I think that's the point there. I said, I think now we're at a place after 2.5 to 3 years and it's been quite a dramatic thing, by the way. I mean, I'm
Oh, I've heard.
blown away by this whole event. And those of you that have been in it, like Tish, I know is there, people that started out with one idea and totally transformed themselves. Henny called me last night and just say she finally back in the pool for those 3 hours. Felt like heaven had opened up. I always swam with the women's swim because I like to swim. So I was there, but I never understood what it meant to the women religious to be able to swim and what they had done. The story, if you know of anybody that is a video person, documentation person, I know a couple, and I think that this is a story that we need to video and put together because it is such a dramatic story. And what happened, what Jane is talking about with the Muslim and the ascetic, but the older women, I mean, the consciousness of older women that had just gave up, never even dawned on them they should go to a pool anymore. That it wasn't for them. They didn't even think that they were being cut out. It had gone so far that this pool has not tried to make it a place for the community. And I'm just suggesting that some of you that are really into parks and design and the use of this place might want to relook with it, because the more disturbing, and the last of my sermonizing, I should become a minister on this topic, is that the Parks Department acts as if this pool is their pool. Now, and I don't hear them sounding, when we were at the Parks meeting last night, I didn't hear our state Leslie Wright sound like that this whole park, that she had to redesign because Jane and everybody else went to bat to help to redesign that park by the waterfront. She didn't act like it was her park. But this park, the way the parks people, at least under Silver, talked, it was their park. And I think we have to reclaim, and I want to see if people agree with me, is to look at the whole design. How is it set up? Who gets to use it? Are there no time for seniors? Are there no time for the handicapped? Are there no time? If all this pool is not, and how much time do the men need for lap swimming? I mean, I'm happy they have lap swimming, but right now their lap swimming has been cut out, by the way. Henny said they were very concerned when they went to their swimming yesterday, yesterday, I guess, one of the days that they have these 3 hours that they've been given, that the time for lap swimming was not there. So anybody that knows people that swim and lap, we got to catch up. The point is, do you think that this is an important issue of who gets to use this pool? And can we make it an example of an inclusive place that different people are thought about? That's it.
Well, one thing that would make
Any
it less inclusive,
comments on that? And we'll move on to.
one thing that makes it less inclusive, and I do not know what the figure is, but perhaps somebody here can tell me, is how expensive it is to actually have a membership to this quote public pool.
That would make it less inclusive?
Less inclusive.
It's
You're
true.
eliminating a
Right.
lot of people. And probably the
that
people who
idea,
need it the most.
Right.
Good point.
Right. The reason that the idea of membership, and that's certainly not something that we voted on, it came up as an idea from one of our members trying to figure out how to get around the issue that the mayor himself was blocking the fact that the women could have their 8 hours of swim
Okay.
time. And they thought, well, maybe if we have membership for those 8 hours, because they paid, that's the other whole big scandal, is that these women paid for membership for the pool for those years, and their hours were taken away, which meant that they never could use the pool.
Which they had paid and were
except
promised they were able to use. Yes.
Right. So they never get their money back because they didn't want their money back. They wanted their 8 hours or 10 hours. So the point is that
Just to let everyone
I think we should just Go on.
Oh, no, just that, that they
What-
were also proposing if men wanted men swim, they should have men swim. And when it came up about LGBTQ people, like if a trans woman wanted to swim, the Hasidic and Muslim women said they were fine if they, were dressed properly and identified as a woman. And they said it's none of their business. That's fine. So I felt like
Right.
that's
And,
pretty
and
accommodating. That's reasonable. And just to me, it was common sense because there were hours in the middle of the day, many hours that weren't being used. So just seems like common sense to
So you're not
let.
taking anything away from anybody by using it.
Yeah, that's what I think.
no, and I will send you out. We'll just put it on. I'm just saying this, so we keep this issue on our agenda. This is now the time where we will be. They will be the women's swim group. Will be writing letters and meeting with the new political people. Eric Adams had supported the women's swim, so had Antonio reluctantly. We went through a lot of what do you call diversity issues. There's been long fights between the Hasidic community, the Hispanic community in Williamsburg. They were men usually. And so the issue of so many Hasidic women being a part of the women's swim, was a little nerve wracking for some of the people that had been on the other side of fights. But then people began to listen to each other and they evolved their thinking. And Jennifer and Antonio came forth, but it was not. I'm just saying, we went through many things, just like the transgender, was used all the time. And the women always would look puzzled. So it was somebody was trying to create a way to point a finger and say this group of people are against transgendered people.
Was
And I didn't have any idea what they were going to say one way or another. But they said, why do we care? If they dress like a woman, they're coming in as a woman. Their thing is about modesty.
Mhm.
The issue is modesty. They're supposed to be modest and they're not supposed to have their bodies in front of men. So they never said that, but people kept trying to act as if they would. And so I think that this is like how a lot of issues happen between diverse groups. People create a scenario that is not even a fact. So unless is there anybody that thinks we should take this issue off our agenda? I'm just saying this is ongoing.
So, Jan,
Katie?
I had emailed you, Jan. Unfortunately, I have to run at 6:30 because we have our board meeting tonight. But
I know.
I'd be curious, if this is a question anywhere else across the city. I imagine that this isn't the only neighborhood that has made this request, and so, if there's precedence elsewhere, that would strengthen the argument to be able to have that accessibility here.
I can give
And-
you, we have tons of literature on women's swim places in particular, but from Canada
Mm.
and Muslim and Jewish. So we have some, but what the latest reading is, we don't know, but that's a good, so we can say that we want to find this out.
But not in the.
Somebody, and we have a new, right. And both of you, since you're both Jane and you have issues of on parks and you have other things. Jane, do you want to give any update on what you had brought out at the last meeting about our efforts to try to make visual the statues, bricks, all the work that you've been doing with others on opening up the parks visually to
Catch up with
with-
Jane, I'll catch up with you later on that. I actually have to jump off because I'm leading this other meeting, but thank you, and I'll be in touch soon.
Okay, thank you. And that might be something your committee can take on too.
For sure.
Your
I
other.
asked for it to be put on the park
Absolutely,
agenda. I agree. All right. Good night.
All right, Jane, you want to give us an update before you're running?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna launch a Kickstarter in March, and they've been amazing. So, and I have, working on locations, but yeah, I guess I should probably go to the full community board with this. And we kind of did a resolution
think
about that
so.
at the
I
last
think
meeting.
that-
We voted to do that.
I think so. this is the time of the year you bring it up, and then it's there. Otherwise, you can get caught up in the trail. So one is you've asked, just say what you've asked this committee to do when we did have a quorum, which we don't tonight, so we don't have to worry about the language so much. But you've asked the committee to support this endeavor that you're involved with, you and others. You want to just say a few sentences about it and then where we are with it?
Yeah, I
Besides
mean,
raising
well,
money, which
this
is what
is
you're saying.
just a way to publicly recognize more women. And it would be creating brick paths with women, I'd go to all the community boards. Sure, why not? And help people start committees to find women who've been impactful or historically significant in their communities and find well-traveled paths. There are 1,700 parks, 2,500 green streets. We could find places to put these paths and then have a big online component. So this would be a way to have the women categorized online chronologically, they have geographical context and categorize them by what they do. So it'd be easier to people find them, to put them actually into history, where they belong, because women, the project's called All Along because women have been contributing historically all along in our society. So the Kickstarter likes it and they're being really helpful. So
Oh yeah, here's Bella trying to get on, but
yeah, but anyway, so
yes.
yeah, so it's coming along. Lots of
Yeah,
meetings.
we're on.
Always doing meetings with it. But if anybody else is interested in hearing more about it, contact me.
Well, first of all, it's an
But I gave a
extremely well
presentation.
done. We're
I
all
gave a long-
tired.
I gave a long
It's a-
presentation last time, so I
Right,
didn't want to
right,
take up too much time with it.
right. So we are saying that we're going ahead with bringing to the board and to the Parks Committee, because part of how the Women's Committee works, just to remind people, is not to do all the work, but to make sure that women are thought about throughout all of the CB1. So the Parks Committee is the next place to bring up this, both the women's swim and the issue of the design, this issue of how, what's the shortest sentence that you say to describe this the bricking, I mean, bringing, what's the title?
Well, it's called All Along, or the All Along.
All along.
All
To
Along.
show that all along what women have done in these different neighborhoods, tying
Recognition
it to the community board.
for women, including grassroots women.
Yeah.
'Cause a lot of our organizing historically has been grassroots organizing.
Right.
We weren't given, women weren't given recognition.
So people,
But it's valid, it's organized, and yeah. So anyway, enough about that. But we could talk
but
about
this is
this
a
other
step further, right?
with the serial harassment. I think that probably Heather and John are here for that. And
Yeah, I
it's
think we
crazy
can
that
at
other
least
people haven't.
start a conversation. Unfortunately, another person that would like to speak seems to be stuck
Yeah,
in
Heather,
the
we're
subway.
going to start the
But
conversation.
it's
And-
not,
yeah,
it's an over,
no,
my God,
I said we,
it's
so
overlapping things.
yes, and Heather, we're glad.
I'm sorry, you're cutting it out. I'm really not trying to step on
Well,
toes. It's,
generally, we are. No, you're not. I'm saying that Jane, just to finish that thing, is that in March, between now and March is Women's History Month. So we're looking at bringing all the political women in the neighborhood to that meeting, inviting them early on about what their agenda is for women, but to really put on this on front and center, this effort to do what Jane and this team of women are talking about, which is to give the recognition to what women have done in this neighborhood through the parks work. And so we'll talk about that. We've talked about it already. We'll talk about it more, but let's target March. And we already have our walking tour for neighborhood women that we could bring back up and all that. So we're finally getting the visibility. I mean, I don't mean the committee, the making visible the roles that women have played in neighborhoods, whether they're professional or grassroots. So thank you, Jane. Now, Heather, I said we obviously, this is not the kind of night to have this. We should start with the discussion, but let's plan for February what
Yeah.
we really want to do with you, Heather. So
Well-
lay out what you were thinking about.
Well, I think this is just prelim because there's not enough people here.
Right.
And frankly, there's people
That's what I'm
who
saying.
are
Right.
afraid to speak. Okay, it's not just a serial harassment issue. It overlaps, it's women's issues, LGBTQ, and public safety in public space, all wrapped up in one. And God, where do I even start? I wish Deborah Spiroff was here because I was really hoping that she would do the intro on this, but she's not. She's been sick. Long
But we're
story
just gonna
made.
plan for how we're
Okay,
gonna do it, right?
I'm gonna just try to outline what the issue is because I feel
Good.
okay talking about this because I'm not really directly involved with what is really, I think, the most imminent problem that's, gonna hurt people. There's a gentleman that plays the saxophone at McGolrick Park, and he it bothers people, and that's been a source of friction. Okay, that's just a quality of life thing. I don't live near McGolrick, but that's been a problem. Somebody called a noise complaint. The police showed up. It's not really clear what happened. There doesn't seem to be a reliable narration of what led up to it, but he was tasered and arrested. And he's actually facing charges, a court date for assaulting a police officer and resisting arrest.
Oh.
Now, that's one part of the problem. North Brooklyn Essentials, which is an arm of North Brooklyn Mutual Aid, seems to have kind of taken this guy as a beachhead to take on issues with the police. The problem with that is he seems to be harassing women, like following them home and doing some other things that are really not good. And North Brooklyn Essentials has gotten pushback on this. And instead of really being accommodating to that, they just seem to be kind of either shouting over, tuning out, or just pushing it down. And it's not just limited to women being harassed. There's been some incidences that involve homophobia, him calling somebody a faggot and threatening to beat them up. You know, it's really a very sticky, tough thing to handle because it seems to be handled purely by the cipher of race and police misconduct, which may or may not be true. We honestly just don't know. But you've got the misogyny, you've got the LGBTQ concerns, and you have an organization that really has no authority. I mean, it's not a city agency, it's not an elected representative. Putting this stuff out there in the way of statements and solidarity, and frankly, given this guy's behavior, and when he got out of jail, they had kind of a meet and greet with him at McGorrick saying, hey, meet this guy, blah, blah, blah. You could be putting people in danger. I think that kind of sums it up. I would prefer to write it all out, but there's a couple of people here who are listening. Maybe they would like to speak about it. Maybe they wouldn't. I know they want to talk about it, but they may want to communicate with you privately. Probably Tom Burrows as well, because like I said, it's a public safety issue too.
If you're done, Heather, I
Well,
would be happy to speak as one of the people you spoke about, but I'm also very conscious this is the women's meeting and I don't want to take up time here.
You're welcome.
Well, what you're touching upon is LGBTQ. It works.
Yeah,
Yeah, I appreciate
we
that.
are open to men being allies. Yeah.
So I'm the person he called a faggot, and my name's not really John. I'm using a pseudonym. I'm really very uncomfortable because not any of you seem like, nefarious or anything, but I don't know what the record of this, where it goes. But because of the actions of the North Brooklyn Mutual Aid Group, especially makes me very nervous to speak about this in public because I think Heather gave a very good introduction there. I have a lot of details about this man. He goes by the name Dusty Rhodes, Rhodes. His real name is James Arthur Rhodes. And I'll try to keep my version of this very brief, but I know, like I said, I know a lot about this man, and he has really, unfortunately, dominated much of this year for me and made my life very hellish when he's around. So this began 9 months ago in late March of this year. And I live on Driggs Avenue near the Variety Coffee Shop on the corner of Russell and Driggs. And one day, this man just showed up out of nowhere, Dusty, and started playing a sax. Well, one day I just started noticing a saxophone being played very loudly near my home. I didn't really know where it was coming from. And I just kept hearing it, and it kept coming back day after day, longer and longer durations. After about 4 or 5 weeks of this, I texted my neighbor one day to say, hey, what is going on with this? At the time, I was working a night shift, and this guy started playing earlier and earlier every morning, waking me up in my home with my windows closed. I was working until 5 in the morning and sleeping during the day. He made that impossible for me. And I asked my neighbor if she knew where this was coming from. She did not. We both assumed it was someone being very loud in McGorlick Park. I was very shocked to walk outside and see that this was a guy playing a saxophone about 25 feet from my front doorstep in front of Variety. I walked up to him. I tried to talk to him then. My tone, he did not respond well to. I was, we do live in New York after all, but I walked up to him and I said, hey, are you the saxophone player? I can hear you in my apartment on the second floor all day, all the time, every day. What goes on? He immediately just started screaming at me, just, spitting, wild accusations, calling me, a racist, and tells me that if he ever sees me again, he will break my legs. And then he begins playing even closer to my home, directly outside the building next door, facing the building where he had no audience whatsoever. And he would start coming as early as 7 o'clock in the morning, playing for 8, 9, 10, 12, 13 hours one day. He played until 8 o'clock at night. He'd play until after the sun sets. He would be often just screaming. I learned so much about him from just listening to his conversations through my closed windows, and he didn't seem to have any appreciation for the fact that people who live around McGorlick Park live in 100-year-old buildings with thin walls and crappy windows. And, I could hear someone sneeze outside my apartment. And it's like this guy is just making it his mission to make lots of noise. After a week of him doing this, I tried to go out there and fall on my sword and apologize to him and try to reason with him. Big mistake. I went out there that day. He was standing about, I would say, less than a foot away from a woman who was sitting there outside Variety trying to just read, playing a saxophone in her face. She was looking at me like, hey, can you help me? So I came up and sat next to her and said, pretty weird, huh? Pretty interesting behavior. Dusty stopped playing, turned around, and I kind of walked over. I said, hey, can I talk to you for a second? And he immediately starts screaming at me again. He sticks his phone in my face, backs me into a corner in their outdoor seating area at Variety so I cannot move, screaming at me, no mask on. This was in late March or early April. I guess this is early April at this point. I don't know if this guy's vaccinated, screaming at me, has his phone about an inch from my nose, calling me all sorts of names, telling me he'll never leave. And he tells me, I told you, faggot, I'd break your legs if you ever talk to me again. He's bragging to the woman about saying he'd break my legs. He says I have his son come beat me up. And then the noise just went on and got worse and worse to the point that I had to leave my home and go stay with family for 3 weeks because that's how out of control this got. I was unable to sleep. This was the noise was outrageous. In the meantime, my neighbor and I, we witnessed him do things like he cornered a woman between a tree and a parked car and was screaming at her until she agreed to hug him. And just this ugly, droning, quavering noise going on and on for hours.
John, what's the situation now?
So I came back in June and it had kind of subsided a bit, but then he started showing up in late June. And after 4 months of this, I started making 311 complaints in coordination with some of my neighbors who were also disturbed by this. And we didn't want to do that. 311 kind of made him go away for a while, but then he started coming back. And then it turned into this weird game he was playing this summer where he'd show up early in the morning, play for a little bit, run away to the park, hide in the park, play in the park all day. So I ended up getting in touch with, I'm sorry, I'm telling kind of a long version of this. I ended up getting in touch with Officer Romery Rodriguez from the 94th Precinct, who's the community relations officer. He went and talked to Dusty personally, and he's been the only person. I reached out to Emily Gallagher's office, Stephen Levin. I reached out to so many people, the owner of Variety. No one would help. No one would do anything about this. Except, Officer Rodriguez kind of got this guy to at least stop coming to my corner, or at least, usually. But he started taking up residence in McGorlick Park over the summer. He plays extremely loudly. I'd be able to still hear him in my apartment in the park with my air conditioner on and the windows closed in my apartment. That's how loud he is. There was all sorts of stuff in the park he did this summer. A friend of mine witnessed him spitting food at a soccer coach with a bunch of children, screaming about raping the children, or the coach raped the children, and he had the biggest penis in the park. My friend submitted a complaint to 311 about this. There was zero follow-up. I have documentation of this. A woman sent me a video of this man chasing another man who tried to intervene when he was sexually harassing a woman. So sorry, to get to your question, to answer your question, Janice, he was not arrested, by the way, just to make it clear, in McGorlick Park. He was arrested in East Williamsburg somewhere. And what I have read is that a student film shoot, called 311 because he would not stop playing while they were trying to shoot their film. And the police, like she said, tasered and arrested him. I thought this was going to be over with. He had only been coming occasionally to the farmer's market on the weekends, where, again, he plays so loud and for so long, he can wake a person up in their home, including, but this is all pretty much, it was at least once a week. But anytime I've encountered this guy in the streets around my house, usually he goes to the bodega on the corner of Driggs and Humboldt to buy beer. He gets very drunk. I assume he might be on drugs too, but I don't actually know that. But he's definitely getting drunk. My neighbor has seen him in there buying beer. And when I've encountered him on the sidewalk, he will stop, ball up his fists, turn around, glare at me, try to intimidate me. And I don't like living this way. I live here. He does not live around this area. He may live somewhere in North Brooklyn, but he does not live around the park here. I've never seen him any other time than when I hear him playing his horn. And I'm sick of living this way. This has gotten to the point that if something does not change here, I'm going to have to move out of my apartment, because this has how badly this harassment has gotten. And I am extremely disheartened to see these trolls from the mutual aid group North Brooklyn Essentials run a PR campaign for this guy, and have a meet and greet with him, which they did on Sunday.
Which I think is really the most pertinent part of this discussion here with women's issues. You gave a good lead up as to kind of what got the ball rolling. But yeah, then there's the escalation in North Brooklyn Essentials. I'm sorry, I just wanted to chime in there.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much my story, other than I met Heather through a Nextdoor thread.
That the city, you're saying that this is you're saying that the police department, for one, that the city, because the community board is about the functioning of city services, public services, right? That you're saying that the services that you're supposed to be able to have are not functioning. And one of the reasons they're not functioning in this situation is that either people are extremely uncomfortable because it's a racial situation,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
It's a diversity situation. And it seems to be that the police department is not interested or incapable of knowing how to deal with questions of diversity
Well,
in an effective way.
you've got
I mean,
the elected officials, which seem to have just sort of checked out. You've got this
yes,
organization that has no real authority that's stepping in and frankly making matters worse. Nobody's moderated this. I mean, I do
I'm
not
saying
like
people, everybody's falling apart. Everybody's falling apart. Nobody seems to know how to deal with the issues when diverse people are involved, at
well,
least in this one case.
and I get tired of this cudgel that seems to be a thing they use about white women over and over and over. And trust me, I am a white woman.
Yes,
I am
yeah.
ashamed of how some of my brethren behave. But you know what? There's also the man aspect of this, which is that you have men that feel entitled to your attention, to your mental labor, or even just physically to your body. And that can fall within race, but it can fall outside of that. And he seems to be
But
demonstrating a
white
pattern with
women
women.
are women, and they have a right to be safe.
Exactly,
because
exactly.
because you're white, you did not give up your gender identity and what happens to women.
It
But that has been an effort that's gone all the way back to the beginning of time to try to get white women. We have diverse women in our neighborhood, and the ability to deal with diversity is a pretty essential component for the police department. That's what we had to go through years ago on battered women and all that stuff in the home. When police would go in, they didn't know how to handle. I'm just saying this is not a new issue. You're targeting one, and I don't know if this man is the same man. We had I'm over by Bushwick and Driggs, and we for a whole year or two we had a guy over here that was standing in the middle of the street and doing a whole variety of things. He wasn't playing a saxophone. There is a man playing a saxophone that's actually very nice over by our bank. So I don't know. But you're saying that it's not being handled and that people are compounding it. And instead of clarifying what is not legal, it's not legal for somebody to play an instrument by your window all day long. I assume. I
Can I
don't know what
say
the laws
something,
are on.
Jens? Sorry, can I jump in here? I don't mean to
Please.
interrupt, but what's very
No.
fucked up about this, to be honest with you, is what he is doing when he's making all that noise is he is actually not breaking any laws. This is pretty outrageous. In New York City, you can't take a boombox in front of someone's house and play it and make a bunch of noise, but you could take an instrument, an acoustic instrument, which technically a saxophone is, though it is the loudest acoustic instrument, and you can play it in front of someone's house as long as you care to, actually, during normal daylight hours. And so it wasn't that the police weren't arresting this guy or weren't doing it. It was that their hands are actually kind of tied by what the law is here. And another thing that Officer Rodriguez told me is that, what's that? I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said. But another thing Officer Rodriguez had told me was that in addition to him not doing anything, necessarily illegal. Hello. He said that because, a lot of people, are you still there? Officer Rodriguez told me a lot of people, including myself, when he first, threatened me, are loath to call the police on the black man, and so they are not catching him when he's doing illegal things like the sexual harassment of women could qualify as aggressive panhandling, but they're not there to catch him when this is happening. the precinct is very well aware of who this man is and what he's up to. But it's like, you know, they're not like having someone follow him around looking for him to fuck up or something.
Well, they
And
can't do that, and they shouldn't. But yeah,
right. And also, I was gonna say, Heather and I have found a website where someone's, you know, put a bunch of articles about this guy Dusty.
he has a
He
history.
he
That's what's scary.
assaulted a Parks Department employee, an older gay man, by the way. In 2019, he beat this man with a skateboard. His photo was on Channel 2 News about this. He's also been involved in lawsuits with the city over wrongful arrest. And according to claims that Dusty has made himself on Reddit, he has won a lot of money from the city over wrongful arrest. So it also may be that the police are afraid to touch this guy. It's pretty diabolical to me. So, sorry, that's all I'll say, and I'll let you all get back to your meeting, but thank you so much for letting me speak. I appreciate it.
Okay.
By the way, I'm Anna, and I don't
Very
know,
helpful
Heather asked me
because
to
Yeah,
join, and
Anna.
I was just curious if you, Heather, because I came in late, so I'm not sure exactly what you've mentioned, but if you want me to touch upon anything in specific, I can definitely share my experience.
Yeah, please do. Listen, I don't live over there. I've just seen sort of the things that are going on with North Brooklyn Essentials, Brooklyn Aid, Dusty harassing people on Reddit, and this gentleman that runs North Brooklyn Essentials basically just being a troll on Nextdoor. And basically, like, if you're a woman who had an experience with this guy and he's kind of re-victimizing you, I'm just going to frame it that way, but I want you to
Of
speak.
course. No, it's absolutely true, you know. And this was a very interesting experience for me because I didn't expect it to kind of grow to the size it did in the beginning when I initially experienced what happened to me. And I'm actually very glad that I spoke up because all these other women came up and actually spoke up. My experience was that one day I was sitting at McGoldrick Park and I was doing some work. I was studying for a test, and I kept on looking up because I tried to be self-aware so nothing happens. You know, I kind of tried to keep tabs on what's going on. And when I would pick up my head and look around, sometimes my eyes would kind of like meet Dusty's, and I didn't really think much about it because I didn't know him. And as soon as that would happen, he would like start walking my direction. But what I would do is I would look back down into my book and pretend like this was a completely like that didn't happen, you know? And then he would kind of drop it. But then I would notice that if I pick up my head again, he would still start walking towards in my direction again. And it kind of happened a couple of times and I kind of dismissed it. I was like, okay, maybe there's just some creepy guy, you know, like there's so many creeps around. I'm not even gonna get into that. I don't want to start anything. So I kept on studying, and then a friend of mine was actually in the park, so we spent a couple of minutes together, we were talking, and then it kind of got dark. It was maybe like 7 p.m. And I was walking out in the park on the side of the Driggs, kind of like when you shoot straight across the park. And I kind of split up with my friend, but we stood there for a little while because there was some commotion going on. And as I walked back towards where Medfoot is, I noticed that that guy is walking out of the park, right? I was like, okay, he's going home, right? Like constant happen, right? I'm not gonna flag this necessarily. But then I crossed the street and he crossed the street with me. So I was like, okay, maybe he's just going the same direction. I'm trying to explain this to myself and trying not to be judgmental. Another time we're talking about race issues and I was like, okay, I don't want to make this, like feel suspicious, but this guy's walking very closely behind me. So I crossed the street again and he crosses the street. It's the same street that I just crossed. And we keep on walking and I cross the street again and he crosses the street again right behind me. And then I swerve and he swerved and like he kept on just doing exactly what I was doing. Meanwhile, he's on the phone pretending to be talking to somebody, saying things like, I want to get me some, I want that, look like, all that, and saying all these different explicitives, saying all these different things. And initially I was like, okay, he's on the phone, he's talking about food, I don't know, whatever, right? Like I'm trying to make excuses for this guy. But then he hangs up the phone and he continues the same kind of talking routine. So we crossed this. I crossed the street again, and I live on Diamond, and that street is very dark. And I was like, there's no way I'm walking down my street with some guy, whether he's following me, I'm not taking that risk. Like, there's no way, you know? There's like giving people benefit of a doubt, and there's plain stupidity, you know, if I continue walking there. So I knew that there's laundromat in the corner. I was like, I was about to walk into it, but at that point he was like so close behind me that I just elected to just turn around and face him, because one of the things that I learned in self-defense class is that, like, if you see somebody's face, they usually tend to not do anything to you, because at that point you confronted them and you can recognize their face. And even though it was dark and there was not a lot of people there, I knew this is public space, you know? So he kept on walking. He didn't really say anything, but he was so close to me when I turned around that he almost walked into me. And honestly, my adrenaline at that point was like so high. I was just so like terrified that this happened to me, you know? And I posted it online. And all of a sudden, all these women started posting on my post. And they were describing either very similar experiences or even things that are worse than that. You know, people who were actually harassed by him, women with children who get harassed by him in a park. I personally haven't really been to that park since that time, because I am just worried about this guy and what he may do because of this stalking situation. Um, and it's actually terrifying how many women on Nextdoor have spoken up about going through a similar thing. And then this whole entire component came in that Heather mentioned, that this guy, you know, Ben, he's actually trolling this whole entire situation, making it seem like we are discriminating against this black man, you know, in the park, when this is not what this is about. You know, I don't, women are not collateral damage. Just because there are other things that are happening, that doesn't mean that women are supposed to sacrifice themselves for the cause, you know? It's terrifying. And for me, not being able, I've lived here for 20 years, not being able to go to the park and to find able to go to the park and be welcomed back, because apparently he is the victim, even though he victimized so many women, is terrifying. It's just a complete reality check. I knew it was bad, but I didn't know that it's that bad, you know?
Well,
Yeah, and I'm welcome to, like, you know, I can definitely share the threads and everything. And of course now we saw how he, like, Dusty posts on Reddit, and on Reddit it seems like he is completely oblivious to the fact that these women don't want to be serenaded to their face. They're being felt, they're feeling uncomfortable. He's saying how we are appreciating and how we love his
Very
attention, and how he's so delusional that he thinks that this is what we want.
it's the stuff on Reddit kind of reinforces what John was talking about and what Anna's talking about. And it's some pretty messed up stuff. I mean, Anna was very brave to go onto a community forum and talk about what she did.
Yes.
And in so doing, now you've got a lot of other women that have come forward that are saying, hey, this has happened to me too. And frankly, it was really, really inappropriate for this Benjamin Adam person to go in there and start saying, well, let me talk to you about how we can feel safe in our community. Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, like you said,
And
across the street, you know,
Anna?
you should avoid this guy.
exactly. Janice kind of popped out and is kind of popping back in, but Jade can also hear you. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
simply
I'm
cross
so
the street.
sorry.
And you know, I wrote to the organization. I don't even remember what they're called, like, honestly, right now. What, North Brooklyn, I don't know, Alliance, I have
North
no idea.
Brooklyn Essentials, which is kind of an under org of North Brooklyn Mutual Aid. Excuse me.
Here you go. Yeah, I'm telling you, I wrote to this guy, and you know, I was trying to be super respectful on
I'm
Instagram when I saw his post, and I
having
said, hey, listen, like, are you aware that
right
this person has harassed so
sound
many
is
women, and he has
trouble.
hurt
The only
so many
one with trouble with
individuals. Like, I think Janice is dropping out. I'm talking over her because I
Yeah.
can't really hear her. But yeah, and he was so disrespectful, and
Who did you write
he was
to?
so dismissive. And
She
Ben,
wrote, okay, North Brooklyn Mutual Aid, North Brooklyn Essentials kind of operates off of an
I
Instagram platform. I mean, they have a website, but she and a number of other people
so it's
went over there and started raising hell, which you can understand they're going to want to do.
so are we working on I want to just get the direction going.
I think
Yeah.
that we need to have a discussion about how things like this are handled because it seems like the politicians have checked out. The police does whatever they do. I mean, Laura and I are here because we have our guy over here. I think she would like to talk about it, and I would too.
Yeah, I can't
You know, but it all falls back on the shoulders of the women, it seems, and it's incredibly frustrating. And frankly, I'm very scared for people that live over off of McGolrick because this guy's behavior seems to be ramping up and spiraling.
Yes.
especially when he's
He
being
says on
like
Reddit he'll never leave.
encouraged.
You know, when you have an
excuse
organization
me, can
such
I
as North
take back
Brooklyn is,
sharing? Jane,
yes,
can
ma'am.
you help? Or
Yeah,
Heather,
sure.
can
I have to
you
go soon.
help?
I have to go to the, I'm
Sure.
late to leave, but I just really, I'm so sorry that, and I saw the next door, and Heather and I have talked about this.
Deborah too, but
But
she ain't here.
yeah, and Deborah who couldn't make it, but it's really unsettling
Okay,
just
so
how many women have come forward. And I think we need like Jan and her team from Neighborhood Women years ago have developed processes to help people have these discussions that are hard to have. And I feel like we really need like a mediator to get through this, because if you look at the behavior there, I don't know how you can defend it. And oh, what's happening now?
people have now
Are we all
discovered, people have now, women have
happened?
now discovered that they are not the only one, right? That there's a wide variety of people that are feeling uncomfortable around McGoldick Park right now because of the situation,
You
right?
know,
Is
given
that
it's
an
a law
accurate?
enforcement thing, yeah, I'd like Tom Burrows and public safety to be in on it because there's also this homophobic aspect, guys being afraid of being beat up, and he just rants, and it's
I
just
hear
bad.
it. So why don't we talk about a joint meeting? And also, I would like to bring
Idea.
in somebody that's an expert on dealing with diversity, because it's very interesting that in Williamsburg, Greenpoint, where we have an extremely diverse community, and we probably have less issues than a lot of other places, all of a sudden it was perfectly okay to jump on the Hasidic women and Muslim women when we wouldn't jump on anybody that's a trans woman, right? We can't. We're beginning to have some very strange ways of looking at what it means to be inclusive, and I think that we need to review, what that means, because you're saying that civil society groups, like the North Brooklyn group you're talking about, are intervening, but in a way that's not helpful. That's actually creating more of a problem and not less of a problem. Is that what you're saying?
I'm
Like
saying
in the
that.
response, sorry, in the response to me saying that this person harassed women and maybe there's a better way to address this because they made a post about him being, attacked by the police unlawfully and being a victim and being this, and it wasn't even about that part. It was really that this organization kept on stating that he is a friend and neighbor of the community, which made me feel it's misrepresented.
Yeah, so people
In
are
my
mixing
response,
apples and oranges, right? He obviously
exactly.
is
And
a
then
neighborhood.
right, but then he's friendly, he's and I said, he has harassed all these women, and the response of this organization is to make another post that it's not it's not no anybody's place. I guess it was addressed to me and whoever else messaged them, that to judge somebody's character, because this is a bigger issue than that. And I was like,
And then what
what?
happens is people get angry and start yelling at them because they feel physically endangered by their actions. And then he says, well, you're insulting me.
Well,
And
I
it's
mean,
like,
we
Yeah,
have a
or
whole
he
lot of
says,
stuff
or he
going on
says,
for people.
I don't have anything else to discuss with you. He's basically very dismissive. He's like, this is all like I'm gonna let you talk, about, and I'm cutting off this conversation, and I don't give a, about what you want to say.
Right.
That's
So
very
Him
what I'm
dismissive
saying is
organizing
that,
that.
I'm so sorry. Can you hear me?
so we are having who?
Oh, it's Jane. I have to go. I'm late for this. I have to go.
Yeah. So we're saying that people
So
are proposing that we do a joint meeting with the SLA,
that's
with
great.
Tom.
And
Because
let's
it's
have
a
a
safety issue, but we do need to
mediator.
we need to bring in people that are very good at dealing with diversity.
Yes.
Because people are mixing up apples and oranges. Obviously, he has
exactly.
rights too, but he
Excellent.
doesn't have some statements here from the Women's Committee that women are not going to be stopped from speaking out because people are now that means that all white women can't speak out anymore.
Well, there's a fear of retaliation too from him and
Well, there's
from people within.
retaliation and
Yeah.
the issues of inequality and all this that everybody is trying to grapple with in this society, which is nice, but it doesn't help when people get paternal and start creating you can talk, but you can't talk. There's
Right.
got to be very good guidelines. So we have to have a meeting that is structured in that way. And I know a few people that may still be around that have done really good work on diversity that we could bring in. But we also can have a community meeting too, if you're looking for that.
I think that
So
could be
think
a good
about
idea.
exactly.
We
You know,
need
I mean,
something that we need a
because
tightly moderated
Yes.
situation
right.
where this Ben guy is not going to control the conversation and the narrative because that's what's going on. And it's really not cool.
Yeah, I think a real
So you'll work with me, Heather. I mean,
Oh, hell yeah.
yeah.
several
good.
of you will become a working committee, and that can you put into the chat those of you that are willing to be on a working committee to plan for
I
this
am.
event?
Can
Huh?
you hear me? I have
Yeah.
to go. But
I
I'll
hear
be
you,
on the
Jane. I'm not in the
Okay.
chat.
Jane,
I'll be
go.
on the
We want you
committee,
to go.
but I'm sending hugs to
Yeah.
all of you and thank you.
Yeah, no, you're very
And
brave people. I really
yeah,
appreciate
I'm so
speaking up.
sorry.
Very we had two people over by me that played that role, so I have some idea. It'll be interesting to see if they're the same ones. But it's sad because people don't know how to deal with race issues. And
Which, if I could interrupt, the reason Laura
Yeah.
popped in is because they've done this kind of thing before. It's like Dusty was part 2 and this other guy was part 1. Okay. I mean, Laura, do you feel comfortable doing the intro? I've talked my head off and I'm sure I'm driving Janice crazy.
You're not driving me crazy.
Well, yet. That's
Just a
the
minute.
operative word.
Just a minute. I have my most important male that walks into my room. My son. Yes, he's asking me a question. You want it?
If
Yeah.
you'll all forgive me, can you hear me? I
Yeah.
really appreciate that you took the time for me to talk about this and listen to me. It really means a lot. Very few people this last year have listened to me about this, and it's been extremely frustrating. So it really means a lot to me. I'm in touch with both Anna and Heather on Nextdoor. I actually have to go myself as well, but I would be happy to do anything I can do to
Okay,
help
we're
find this
proposing to
balance.
design one of two things or both. A meeting, a face-to-face meeting in the neighborhood where people work out guidelines of how they're going to handle this neighbor to neighbor, or we're just bringing forth recommendations of how issues like this need to be handled, because your city services, whether it's 311, the police department, or the parks department, all three of them are not responding in a proper way, that's for sure.
Yes.
And just to say something in closing here, John, is that your park, McGoldrick, I lived on Jewel Street, but and maybe you all don't know, but there was a woman by the name of Pat Tembakis who organized in the 80s or 70s mothers making that park safe for women and children, because that wasn't safe then. And she got every store around and everything around to put up a sign in their window that said, anybody that needs to have a safe place, our place is a safe place for you to come if you need to. It was a big thing and very successful, and they got the park under control for a long time. So you have a history
and
to build
I'll
on.
tell you another thing that came out of this thread on Nextdoor that I think was, a bit, or greatly empowering.
Yeah.
And you feel and they, or I live by that park, I'll come and get you, and men who said I'll, right?
And I said you've had harder things said to you, as more
Yeah,
scary
and
things
they're trying to
than
help.
some of the men that have been brought down by sex harassment. So we're going to work. You're going to give me your names tonight,
Or can they
chat,
email you?
and I will say figuring out what my
Yeah, I think
email.
maybe, I'm
Jan
sorry, things are getting
Jan
choppy here.
Brooklyn
I've got your
at
email, Jan.
gmail.com.
I can, okay.
And to Tom, to join me too. We're strategizing.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. I'm sorry I have to go, but I have to log off now. Thank you so much.
Thanks for calling in, John.
Thank you, and I'll be in touch with both
Okay.
Heather and Anna and you as well,
So let's
Janice.
get
Thank you so much.
we have
Take
two.
care.
We're not exactly. We. But say, putting yourself.
Jan, can you hear
Yeah.
me? I'm getting texted
Okay.
from Laura that I think she got like kind of muted or chopped out, but we were kind of
Okay,
going
so
into part 1. You there?
I can.
Laura?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
A little bit.
I don't.
Hi, Jan. Can you hear me?
If you're
I can hear you, Laura.
speaking.
Okay, great. Yeah, so there's this guy, Broussard, that lives down in this area, North Greenpoint.
Nothing. I
And,
don't even.
Huh? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I'm hearing you, Laura. I'm not hearing Janice.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
So-
worst case,
Well,
I'm here.
hopefully,
I'm here.
can you hear me now?
Annis is here.
So this guy Broussard has he's done a lot of harassing women, attacking people. Basically a lot of people are just plain old afraid of being near him.
women,
Yeah,
women and girls.
He's been known to do a lot of things, including showing himself to a couple of little girls in a laundromat down here. There's some complaints that the police have never even received about him because parents have just been, and a few Hispanic parents were just skitsed out about reporting it because of immigration issues and things like that.
Or they're scared of the
So-
police.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things going on down here. And the, I mean, this guy's been locked up a couple of times, but again, like I've seen this happen on social media where people talk about him, and other men will chime in on the discussions and say the same type of things that Heather was talking about and Anna was talking about, kind of dismissing the women's, fear or feelings, when all of this is going on, that we should be more concerned about
His
him
mental
being
health,
right, his mental
his
health,
victimization. Yeah.
and him being a person of color. Now, from my point of view,
One of the biggest issues in the world is violence against women. So it's,
yeah.
yes.
So I mean, you know, uh, my feeling about this is if this guy ever crosses my path with one of my children or one of my grandchildren, I'm not that person to just sit on my hands and I'll kick the guy's butt and ask questions later, But and I'm really not gonna give a damn of who. I'm only gonna give a damn about my family and whoever he's attacking at the time. So this is, he's another entity in the neighborhood that we really
That
need
they've
some
taken
attention.
on as a
Well,
cause.
I
Yeah.
think that women and men need to fight that need to fight back in terms of kind of comment that you're hearing. So that's part of our report, is that it's not by people trying to tell.
You cut off a little bit.
Yeah. I'll kind of augment what Laura's talking about because he's been on my radar for over 10 years. 10 years, because at one point his family lived in the basement of my old apartment building. And as such, I had literally like a bird's eye view of what he is capable of doing. And frankly, it's not pretty. Yes, his family is part of the problem, but he's gone in and out of jail. He seems to be getting more violent every time. There is some push to put him through programs, but I'm not even sure he's really completing those or getting the treatment. But he's still coming back and assaulting women. And I'm keeping it very short and sweet. I just want to get up to about April or March of this year because North Brooklyn Mutual Aid or North Brooklyn Essentials issued this public safety statement, and it was about him. And it had these recommendations, which included, please, if you don't feel safe, please cross the street. Or, you don't feel safe, we'll walk you home. I've lived here for 22 years and I've seen this guy become progressively more violent in 10. And to read this statement was it was tone deaf and it was insulting because, frankly, I value my autonomy.
But it's also
And
victim
part of that
blaming.
is, it is victim blaming. And here's the deal. I'm friends with a victim of his, somebody who actually did take him to court. She prosecuted. And the defense attorney's strategy there was to portray her as quote unquote a Karen because, she was white and she was complaining. She got an OOP demanding that it be enforced. That later came back to haunt her in the matter of, well, okay, now you're using this as a sword and not a shield. I mean, it's incredible to me that this is how things work. And then to have this organization come in, making this their cause when they don't seem to have tapped into any of the institutional knowledge over here about what this guy does. It's insulting. It's infuriating. And frankly, I mean, it made me like really, really upset this spring Okay, I caught him violating his OOP, and I testified in a grand jury that he did it. And what did we get back? Well, I'm sorry, this poor guy's been through this. You just have to learn to live with it. I mean, what do you say to that?
A lot.
There's more to
And
it, Janice. I
the
just don't want
awful
to talk
part is
about it.
they keep on talking. Well,
Think
another
that you
thing
have
that
a
really
very strong
frustrates me
case already.
is
You don't need more.
it's another thing that's very frustrating is, they keep on talking about, don't call the police, don't do this, don't do that. Okay, fine. I was like, what's the solution? Because
They
you're
don't
talking
offer
about this
one.
guy. Yeah, and they keep on talking about this guy. And I say, fine. So your idea of giving him help is to enable his behavior, to almost be his cheerleader in what he's doing and being his support network in terms of let's harass more women in a way, because it's really about him getting back to doing exactly what he's doing instead of actually helping this person. If you're really, because they keep on making the statement about helping him, I was like, yes, what does that mean? If this person has mental health issues, how about you accommodate that? How about you help him?
Well, who's
Instead of,
qualified within that organization to even do that? Nobody.
right,
I'm talking.
exactly. But they keep on pushing, like they're not even reaching out to an organization that could help him. What they're doing is they're hosting a meet and greet to have this guy back in the park to do exactly what he does.
And they post their
So,
stuff on Instagram. It's cute, you know.
yes, to just rub
I
it
mean, this,
in the face of all these women that are, being, having PTSD because they can't go to the park. I haven't been to that park. I haven't been to that park since what? September. I don't know when this happened. I don't even know, but I haven't been to that park
if you want to get
because
into
I just don't
issues
want to
of
go there.
police misconduct and brutality, they can do it without having to hold him up as a symbol. They can do the same thing with Bassard. You know, I mean, the Bassard thing to me is just really, really bad. Personally, I mean, it is traumatic because I know who the victim was, and she ended up leaving the neighborhood because she didn't feel safe. And then after that, this whole narrative shifted, even with the police. Well, this is just what you have to learn to live with. And I've been on the business end of police misconduct. And you know what I'm talking about, Laura, right? You there?
Absolutely.
Yes. A
This whole
couple,
this whole thing has me. This whole thing is reminding me of years ago when back in the, not that it's changed dramatically, but better than years ago when a person would get mauled or raped and end up being victimized by the police themselves. And this is the same kind of feeling that I'm getting from this crowd of hecklers.
it's
I think
something
that's
to
it.
me to, on one evening, I'll come out and I'll say it. I don't care. In one evening, I wrote, you can't make this up. I wrote comments on wheat pasted ads on the construction fence. I wrote some stuff. I actually got detained by the 94. While I'm being detained, I am being messaged by somebody 2 blocks away that Bassard is violating his OOP. So she's calling 911 to enforce that, even though it was not the holder of the OOP. I ended up spending a night in jail over writing on 2 wheat paste ads. Okay. He walked because the police said, well, you're not the right person to call this in. So the enforcement was on property rights for something that's not even legal. Someone's trying to do a good thing by pointing out, hey, this guy's over here, he's near where this woman lives, yada, yada, yada. And what did the police do? You know, they didn't arrest him. I know that. They tried to throw a graffiti charge at me. Meanwhile, this guy's over here doing whatever he wants.
But are you all organized now into an organization? Are you building a power base so you can have a voice?
I mean, Laura and I and a few other people have kind of been a neighborhood watch in terms of this person who's since moved, okay? But, you know, hey, he's coming, hey, he's coming. And that's construed as harassment. It's not harassment. This is what women do. But if you go above board with it, I mean, I don't know. It's sort of an interesting parallel to what you were saying about the pool. Okay, the women want their own hours, that's discrimination. Okay, women over here are like, all right, we feel very uncomfortable here. Yeah, this guy's ramping up. Yes, he's filing an OOP. But if you expect any action on it, it's you're punching down on him. And well, I guess on paper, relatively affluent, comfortable white women are going to look more empowered. On the streets, this guy is something else. You get what I'm saying? He's dangerous. He is a sexual predator, though one with disabilities, one who's probably been abused, but you can't use one to cancel out the other.
I think that's the point, but also you have to be organized. So we are moving ahead. It's 7:30. It's a very powerful story you have, by the way, all of you. And to put that together, I think the community really has to hear it. I am going to be back in New York right after Christmas. If Jane we can call a meeting of this planning committee over at Neighborhood Women, which is 249 Manhattan Avenue.
I'm in.
We started, by the way, I personally started the first battered women's shelter in New York State. That's still going, it's big, and set up the legislation in Washington around harassment in shelters and battered women and all this stuff. So I have a long history, but I don't see the organizing here, and that's going to be, you have the right one, just like the pool. The women have the right issue. They had all the details. They have all the facts. Now they have to win it. It's about power. And the men here have to hear that women, whether you're white, black, brown, trans, or whatever you are going to stick together and stand up and not allow this kind of divisive work to make you feel that you can't go to your own park. I mean, it's very powerful, the things you were saying.
Yeah, and it's incredible, I catch myself in this weird loop because, we have conversation with these people online, and you kind of can't get through to them, and it's terrifying to me that they just can't grasp the concept that these women are hurt, that these women have been harassed. It's like I'm saying to this person, like, I had this argument with this guy who completely tried to sidetrack the conversation, and out of the entire thread, because there's I don't know how many women who spoke up, like 40 people probably who spoke up about their experiences, and some guy comes in, and out of this entire conversation, the only thing he kind of latches onto is that somebody said that, police should be called when he plays his loud music. Meanwhile, he just missed completely the fact that so many women were saying about their experience. And I said to him, he said, so he's like, of course I'm against, harassment. I was like, yes, but I want you to be as upset about every single one of these comments as you were about this one comment, which was a complete sidetrack to the conversation. Like, why aren't you so upset about what's happening to us? Why are
It
you
seems to
upset
be
about
like
this?
they like to do this NIMBY thing, like, oh, quality of life crime. You're just like overblowing it. And then they use that to sort of drown out everything else, which is, hey, this guy's following women around. Hey, this guy seems to have some thing or feelings about homosexuals, which is also very scary because we've had actual gay bashings in CB1. Hello?
And the point is, we have across this country, wherever people are not paying attention to the fact that there's a very troubled person running around doing stuff, lots of bad things have happened. As we have had quite a few people shot and killed because people didn't pay attention to a person like this gentleman telling you he needs help.
And
In a
it
matter of
makes me
speaking.
sick because I keep on hearing, people saying, these women are speaking up these days and, the Me Too movement. And they say, oh, why didn't she say anything when that happened?
I'm
then
saying women have always been
we have
put
this
into this catch-22. You are not,
separate
you're
issue
never
that
doing the
they
right
can
thing. You are dressing the
coexist.
right way. And by the way, we have a group here in New York. Let's meet. Let's meet right after the holiday. Thank you for coming on. I'm
Yes.
going to put out a note. Anybody can come. We'll set up a meeting at my office on Manhattan Avenue. And Jane, I'm sure will be there. And
Jade's looped me in, so if you email
right.
her, she can loop me, and then I can loop in other
Right,
people.
And the hope is Jane is taking over a very big leadership role in Neighborhood Women. And at least we have our own building, so that's never a small thing, right? To
It's a
have your
cool
own
building too.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk face to face. Now now I can hear you all. I don't understand how it went from not being able to hear to right now. Now everybody we can hear. Nobody's pictures are up. Maybe that helped. I don't know. But you were all
It does.
extremely eloquent. And this is what people have done to women, is to squash you down, make you feel inadequate. I'm now seeing, having gotten older, we know what people do with older women. So I'm extremely aware about the latest discrimination forms, and we have to stand up for each other. We have to stop it. And if it's one person by themselves, you're going to be afraid. But if other people say it, and to a local organization to feel that they can say what you're telling me they say to you, it's really quite unbelievable. I've never seen that. Usually people would say those things, but not make it public. Right.
And it's
Oh,
very
it's
incredible
public.
because this guy keeps on just saying, I'm a feminist. I'm a feminist. And I said, if you were a feminist, you wouldn't have to say that at every sentence you're saying.
Well, you
The
wouldn't
guy
be
Because
that
making
you're,
so many women upset. If they tell you to
yes,
shut up, you shut up.
right.
I'm sorry,
Well,
I'm laughing
yeah,
because I'm thinking of my husband. But
right.
the other thing, with like roads and a CCRB complaint, they're like, everybody file a CCRB complaint, despite the fact that nobody even seemed to know exactly what happened. You were working on limited information. Deborah Spiroff actually went to the 94 Community Council meeting and asked what happened. Now, the CO was limited. It just said the police was attacked and had to go to the hospital, blah. But none of these keyboard warriors showed up to even ask or confront the
well,
police
I think
directly.
this is very powerful. That's why I said these are the facts. So right now, if you just start, and you probably have done it, but let's just start making a checklist of the facts. This is what's happened.
Yes.
And because for people to fight back, which is of course not the role of CB1 committee, but I've been a long time organizer, as people know, so I can't
Yeah.
resist, is to say that now you know that you need a concerted effort that for a period of time till you can stop it, because you can't let it go on. Once you're in it, and you are all in it now, whether you like it or not, you're in it, you have to win.
Yeah.
You can't lose, because then you lose for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's
I
really
will
about
send you
women,
all.
like,
Yeah.
there was a moment today where this guy who was sidetracking the conversation, I finally said to him, I will not continue talking to you because I don't want to sidetrack this conversation any longer. And his response was, thank you.
It's just
And
gross.
and I said to him, I am not doing this for you. I'm doing it for all these women who have been harassed. And he was
Or
like,
even
bye.
yourself. That's enough.
Like, what?
Yourself
What's
is
going
enough.
on?
Right.
It's like, middle school level of pettiness. And I thought we were adults and
And I think the question is that I still go to the community board meetings. I have not hardly ever heard a woman getting up even in the public hearing and to bring out these issues of harassment and abuse in the neighborhood. They
Because
don't.
they're scared.
Well, scared or
Yeah.
not, I mean, it's scary not to speak and it's scary to speak. So if you have a choice,
Because I'll tell you, because people see the comments on Nextdoor, but there are also women who message me personally, or business owners who message me personally, who said that they're too afraid to comment on Nextdoor. So they
well,
just wanted to let me know
but that, I
personally.
just think historically that's been true, that women, been put in that situation and then they're afraid. But as
But
we
they're
know,
also afraid not even like of him. They're afraid of the community and
that's
the
Well,
let me
not the
all day.
community, that community.
yeah, that
People,
community. Those
And we
people,
have
yeah.
this politically pure community now, and it doesn't even matter what the politics are, whether you're
Yeah.
right or left. There's the politically pure that come up with a whole, act like people can't have their voice. And I think it's really important that women in general do care about people having their voice and having a safe space to speak.
well,
So at
not
least
just a
we have
safe
to fight,
space to speak, but to walk.
right, to
No,
walk
it's
and be. And
it's
that's
like
why
physical space and online space. Both.
if you
They
ever heard how
monopolize.
the Hasidic women have been talked to
Oh
at the
yeah.
pool, at my pool. I'm
Oh, I've
talking
heard.
about when they when they were okay until they stood up and they contested the hours, and the employees and everybody. I mean, the things that they said to them and other people in the neighborhood. I had meetings here in the neighborhood with people that were opposed to women's swim, who are the politically pure people that came and said things to the Hasidic women that I could not ever believe, like they didn't like
Oh,
how they dressed, they didn't like how they did this, they didn't like how they did that. And I said, we have to learn how to talk to each other, and how to be with diverse people, but also to have standards, which is the issue that you're trying for. You can listen, but you have to have standards. Communities like right now, we are all trying to make sure we don't get COVID, right? And it's been really hard to come up with an agreed on standard that people can live with. So it's very interesting times we're in. And I'm glad you brought this forth. Thank you. I will send you an email within the next couple days about where and when. And you can, if it's not good, you'll let me know. Okay?
sure. And I'm gonna hassle
Thank you.
Tom Burrows. I've been like stalking him.
Go stalk him because
I'll keep stalking him.
he's the only person that didn't support our women's swim. So
Well, Tom is Tom.
I know he's a great guy and he does better work than anybody I've ever seen, really.
He's
It's
dedicated, and actually, he's
very
very
dedicated.
qualified to be in this, especially being, a gay
He is
man
dedicated.
that lived through the AIDS epidemic and has dealt with harassment and homophobia and all the
Yes.
other phobias. He's good.
He is good, and we have to be able to appreciate that. I certainly do that about him, even if he voted differently. He voted on many other things that we agreed on. So,
Yeah, sometimes you
hey, thank you
disagree.
again. Have a wonderful holiday,
You
and
too.
we'll see each other either, yeah, probably right after the holiday or in between Christmas and New Year's, or we wait till after New Year's.
I'm thinking after New Year's because a lot of people go out
Okay.
of town.
All right. Thank you, dear.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.